we'll be starting a new series, but connected to what we've been learning before. We just learned amazing mimer from the Alter Rebbe, Mizmor Shir Chanukah Sabayis, about the dedication of the temple and how that relates to music, how music essentially was the expression of the revelation of godliness in the world. And it's the answer, the human being's answer to the accusation. David HaMelech, King David's answer to the accusation of the spiritual, supernal, angelic beings, saying that human beings don't have the ability, the souls that come from on high don't have the ability to overcome the physical challenges in this world. They may be high and holy, but you can't even hear their songs in the spiritual realms. You only can hear the song of the deepest dimension of the holy souls in this world. But there's no chance, there's no hope, because the physical world and its temptations will overpower the delicate, sensitive spirituality of the soul. So the angel said, let's make spirituality not too extreme, and the physicality not too extreme, just right in the middle, and that's where the godly revelation should exist. But God himself had other plans. He created souls and planted them down here in bodies in order for us to transform the darkness, that give us the confidence that yes, it's possible to become swallowed into the physical world, swallowed in physical pleasures, swallowed in base instincts and egotism, self-involvement. But it's more than possible and inevitable, with Hashem's help, for the spiritual to overpower the physical. So, what the Alter Rebbe had brought down in terms of the distinction between the souls and the angels, that the songs of the souls in this world is represented by vocal music, human beings singing with their voice. The songs of the angels is represented by instrumental music, which are the physical aspects of the world, which are the physical manifestations of the angelic beings, because the angelic beings are like animals and vegetative life and inanimate life. They are the spiritual root of the physical world. So when we're playing instruments, we're essentially manipulating, we're harmonizing with the dimension of the physical world, that same physical world that we were warned that would be swallowed in, and we're taking it and we're elevating it. It's the same thing we do when we do a mitzvah. And when music is done in a way connected to mitzvahs, or in a context of mitzvahs, or even in a parv way, meaning it's not it's a joyful way, but it's there's no negativity to it, no negative words connected to it, and we see that it's possible to elevate even the lowest places ultimately. But now, we learned earlier in an earlier class, and we had talked about the distinction between instrumental music and vocal music in terms of what determines kosher music. Now, we learned before learning from the Alter Rebbe, we learned from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, in Likutei Moharan, in Torah Nun Daled in Likutei Moharan, that the music itself separates the good from the bad. It brings simcha. It brings prophecy. It brings the spirit of prophecy. It separates it from the negativity. That's the job of music and the job of a musician. And we could see from the Alter Rebbe's distinction between vocal music and instrumental music. It's a very clear distinction. Vocal music is called by the Hebrew word shir, and instrumental music is called by the Hebrew word mizmor. Mizmor is to cut. Mizmor is something that cuts through. It needs to utilize the physical world, cut through the physical world like a sword. Where shir indicates that it's the same letters as yashar, righteous, or straightforward. It's the same. It's part of the word Yisrael, of the Jewish soul. It's the name of the Jewish people and the Jewish soul itself. Yisrael is, if you rearrange letters, is shir kel. It's the song of God. It's the song of the human being soul, and it comes out in vocals. And when Rebbe Nachman had talked about the ability of a musician to separate good from bad, and he didn't talk about the spiritual status of the musician, which normally the Rebbe Nachman is very keen to talk about, but in that case he didn't talk about it. What is the qualification of a musician? Using instrumental music to bring joy and pull the good out of a mixture of good and bad, pull the spirit of prophecy outside, and bring it out and reveal it. It just has to be Yodei Lanagin. They have to be a good musician, a knowledgeable, effective musician. So we're going to see from this Torah, Likutei Moharan, go to soundheitsrecords.com/classes. This is class number 36. And look at the PDF source over there. It's a 2-page PDF. We're going to learn from Likutei Moharan. This is Torah Gimel in Likutei Moharan. So now, in contrast to Torah Nun Daled, where he talks about how an instrumental musician can accomplish so much, and no mention at all of the spiritual level of the musician, rather of his skill. In this, we're going to be talking about how the quality of the musician, in this case a singer, is very important for the kashrus, for the appropriateness, the spiritual health of the music and the person listening to it. Now, it's a beautiful thing. I'm very happy to be able to find a bridge between Chabad Chassidus on one hand, represented by the Alter Rebbe, in this case, or who are the founder of Chabad Chassidus, right? And Breslov Chassidus on the other hand, with the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. Normally, these are two completely separate schools of Chassidus, and they learn in a very different way, very different approach. So in a Chabad yeshiva, you won't see Breslov Chassidus. You won't even hear it mentioned. It's kind of a little bit taboo, I would say, but nevertheless, if you dig a little bit, you appreciate that Rabbi Nachman, according from the Chabad Rebbeim, starting from the Alter Rebbe, who had acquaintance with Rabbi Nachman, has a very positive view, of course, of Rabbi Nachman, a great tzaddik. And from in the Breslov world, from what I've experienced, though I didn't attend a Breslov yeshiva, but I've had interactions with individuals who have, there's a similar, I'd say, closeness, being closed to Chabad Chassidus. One is one derech, one is another derech, one path and another path. So I think it's beautiful, and I really feel like bringing together different aspects of Torah. It's part of the spirit of Chassidus. We can connect seemingly disparate things, and seemingly they're both under the umbrella of Chassidus, but nevertheless, in the worlds of people who learn the Chassidus, they're very rarely mentioned in the same sentence or talked about as to how they complement each other. And this example in Chassidus and music, I think, is a beautiful example of how Breslov Chassidus and Chabad Chassidus perfectly complement each other. Because here we have the Alter Rebbe and the Maamar we just learned, Mizmor Shir Chanukah Sabayis, talking about the distinction between vocal music and instrumental music, and its particular Torah distinction, difference between angels and souls, human beings. And here in Likutei Moharan, we have two different Torahs, one talking about instrumental music, one talking about vocal music. And they have a very different flavor. The one talking about instrumental music speaks about the skill of the musician, not at all about the spiritual status of the musician. Whereas in Torah Gimels, we're going to see that it speaks about a singer, vocals. And the spiritual status of the musician matters very much. So we're going to be able to come to a really clear halachic understanding based on, through the light of Chassidus, on what music may or may not be appropriate to listen to. And ultimately, for oneself in their spiritual path, for others, this is a beautiful topic and a big question, and one that is often very misunderstood. And as musicians and as Torah scholars, we can bring these two together to really find a practical path in having the full breadth of music as part of our joy palette, without the worry and fear that somehow we're harming the souls and the souls of, God forbid, of our children. So let's get into it. Torah Gimel and Likutei Moharan. Again, the source is soundheitsrecords.com/classes. Class number 36. It starts like this: the right-hand column on the bottom of page 1 of the PDF. Likutei Moharan, Torah Gimel. Alma Rabbi Bar Chana. So the Rabbi Nachman is quoting the Gemara in Bava Basra, famous series of very mystical and very fantastical stories of the mystical rabbi, the wonder rabbi, Rabbi Bar Chana. And there's many different stories. This is one of them. Rabbi Nachman bases a lot of his early teachings in Likutei Moharan on these wonderful stories. So, Lididi Chazi li hahi akrukosa. He says, I had seen myself, I saw a frog. A frog, we see not just any frog, it's a very special frog. What's so special? The Havi ki akra hagrunya, because it was as big as a city. A gigantic frog. Rabbi Bar Chana saw. V'akar the hagrunya kama havi. So how big was this city? Havishisin bati. It was 60 houses large. The frog was as big as a city of 60 houses. Not the biggest city in the world, but gigantic for a frog. So imagine. So these stories really need to be pictured and imagined in the grand, wondrous scale, right? These are fantastic stories. They teach obviously very deep lessons, as Rabbi Nachman learns out, many of them here. But if you just think about the practical, okay, we're going to get even bigger than this, by the way. But a frog that's as big as a city of 60 houses. Okay, picture that. Asa Tanina Bala. Comes a serpent and swallows the frog. So imagine how big the serpent is, swallowing a frog as big as a city of 60 houses. Okay, so imagine how this gigantic serpent, okay? But it gets a bit bigger. Asa pushkansa obala latanina. So a crow, a big giant bird, not just a regular crow, a super crow, came and he swallowed the serpent. So imagine pictures. We have a frog as big as 60 houses. We have a serpent that was big enough to come and swallow that frog. And then we have a bird that's big enough to come and swallow that serpent. I don't know about you, I'm picturing as big as the state of Florida, this bird. It's big, gigantic, right? Huge. But then we're not done. Vesalik Yasiv Bilana, and the bird landed on a tree. Tachazi, Kama Nafish Chela Dilana. Come and see how amazingly powerful and large this tree was. Okay, so now picture this tree. I can't even picture it. Florida was probably too big for to describe the bird. But the bird was plenty big. The tree might be as big as Florida. It's very big. And Rabbi Nachman, so he brings down the Rashbam, which is important the reason Rashbam is the commentary on the Gemara. Most of the Gemara, the primary commentary is Rashi, but there were certain very, very few passages of Gemara, relatively to the size of Gemara, that Rashi had not finished. So his grandson, the Rashbam, he completed Rashi's commentary, but of course, Rashi's name isn't on it. Rashbam is on it. So it says like this. Rashbam says, Akrukosa, right? This Akrukosa, he tells us, is a tzfardeya, is a frog. Kakar de Grunyo, so he says like as large as a city. See, Gadol Hayuka Isakarach. It's as big as a certain settlement. Akara da Grunya kama havi shisanbati. So how big was this settlement? It was 60 houses big. So Rashbam explains Talmuda ka'amrle. So he said, this who's saying this? Not Rabbi Bar Chana. This is the Gemara saying this. The Gemara teaching this. The teacher of the author of the Gemara, of the Talmud is telling us this, explaining how big the frog is. Asa tanina. So a serpent came, and so then Rashbam says on this, Rabba Kamerle. This is back to Rabbi Bar Chana continuing his story. So we had a little parentheses from the Gemara, because Rabbi Bar Chana assumed when he's telling the story we can see the frog itself somehow. But the Gemara had to explain to us how big it was. Pushkansa.
So what is pushkansa? We translate it as a crow. He says Erev Nekev. He says a female crow. That's what Rashbam says. Okay, so now we're at the top of the left-hand column, and Rabbi Nachman teaches. V'hinei mi sheshomei negina mimenagin rasha. Someone who hears a song from a wicked musician, as we're going to see, this musician could be right. Menagin could be an instrumental musician, but in this case, as we're going to see, this is a singer. But as someone who listens to music from a wicked singer, so kashaloi laveris abare. So it's challenging. It puts up stumbling blocks to his divine service, to his spiritual growth. But when you listen to a kosher singer, v'hagain, and a proper singer, spiritually proper, as I tovlo, then it's good, it's beneficial to a person. Kamoshi's bar, as will be explained. Kihine kol hanagina nimsheches min hatzipurim. It's because the voice of music, it comes from birds. It's rooted in the song, bird song. Kedeisa b'medrash, as the medrash teaches, mipnei ma mitzurat harasa tuli b'shtei tziporim. So why is it that the Mitzurah who's a leper, a certain kind of spiritual leper that the Torah describes, and part of his purification comes about through two birds? Two living pure birds, they have to be kosher birds, usually they're doves. Yavel kalanya, v'yechaper al kalanya. So, the kalanya, meaning the curse, the negativity, or the voice, the bird song will come. The kalanya can be a curse. Kalanya also from lashon kol, meaning a voice, will come and will atone for the other voice. One voice will atone for the other voice. Because where does the negative voice come? This negative voice comes from a voice that speaks wicked speech. Lashon hara. Nimtza mishu kasher. So therefore, someone who's kosher, someone who's proper, nimsheches and aginishalo min hashtei separ mchayis Torah. That means when you're singing songs in a positive, kosher way, you're drawing your song from the pure and kosher birds. V'chsiv b'zohar, as it's written in the Zohar, shashtei tziparim hanal yankim ma'asad nevim yankim. So these two birds, right? They're talking about spiritual birds. It's a analogy. It's a mashal. They draw from the same place that prophecy comes from. L'chach nikra menagin chazan. That's why we call a menagin, right, a musician, but here we call him a chazan, right? So chazan, typically we associate with vocal music. Now, it's possible that a chazan could be instrumental music. It's an outdated usage, and it's possible that Rabbi Nachman is also in some level referring to, we could say maybe to instrumental music, but we see from Torah and Daled that since he doesn't mention any of this over there regarding instrumental music, that it makes sense to conclude that when he says chazan, also because chazan and what he's talking about, it refers to a singer and a voice. So here we see a distinction right now with vocal. We're talking about a singer, and his particular spiritual level is very important. But a chazan is called a singer. A musician is called a chazan. A singer, miloshin chazan, which is related to the word chazan. Chazan, right? Chazan Yeshayahu, right? The vision, a visionary, right? Chazan. So it's related to the word chazan. The singer is related to the word chazon, which means a vision, like a prophet. Hainu lashon nevuah. This is prophecy. That one draws, the music is drawn from the same place that prophecy is drawn from. And we see that also in Torah and Daled, because Rabbi Nachman talks about using music to bring out the simcha, which is drawing from a place of
bringing out the spirit of prophecy. It's a ruach tov, and it's bringing out from the ruach nevuah. Because when the musician, the singer, is a wicked person, he's drawing his song from the other two birds, from the klippa birds. Klippa means literally a shell. It's talking about external dimensions. It's negativity and evil in a way that a shell not necessarily is evil. It has a purpose, just like evil in this world, or shells have the purpose in this world. But shells are not the purpose. They have a purpose, not the purpose, right? One could set up a shell with an empty shell, right? And there's something very evil about that, right? It could be something that fools a person, right? You could have, you're looking for what's inside the shell. The shell is there to protect. So if the shell goes beyond its purpose of protecting and then going away, it could be disappointing at the very least, right? If you open up the shell and there's nothing in it, then you have nothing. All you have is a shell, right? The shell is protecting nothing. Or even worse, when shells break, they become sharp. They can be harmful. So klippas are related to evil. The cause of bizarre kiatziparim shebeklippa yankim midadeh malchus. Because the Zohar says that the negative birds, they nourish from the breasts of Malchus. Okay? Malchus is a feminine, right, spiritual dimension of Malchus, and Malchus nurtures, right? It's the kingship. It's the function through which the world, the concealment from the godly revelation turns to concealment in order to create the world, and it nourishes even negativity. Right? So a mother nourishes her children, whether or not they're destined to be righteous or the best or wicked. The kadis paliglela kedain charuza karis kitziparma chuzos bepeh. So the Zohar continues, just like at midnight, there's the announcement is made, like birds, that chuzos bepach, that they're trapped in the sound that birds make when they're trapped, they're caught in a trap. Kehem yoikshim b'nei adam, that they will trap these songs, these trap human beings. The songs of these birds of klippa can ensnare a human being. So that's the malady. That's the illness. The illness is we could get ensnared in the klippas, in the negativity, through a song that's sung by a wicked person, because it's drawing from the birds of impurity, the birds of the shell dimension. And right away, the Rabbi Nachman slips into vatikun. What's the fix? What's the healing for this? That a person is going to be able to listen to whatever music they want and not worry about it. Okay, so we're now, it's important to mention, we're not talking about this is like a cure, like a person takes an antidote and can drink any poison. It's a protection from, meaning that someone can do what the Rabbi Nachman is about to say, do this tikkun, and then listen to whatever they want, kosher or not kosher. No, it's talking about when you don't know if the singer is kosher. We don't know inside a person's heart. If you know the person is not kosher, you know from the words of the song, or you know from the person's actions, their current actions. Obviously, a person could do tshuva and transform their life and their actions. Turn from a rasha, a wicked person, into a complete tzaddik, a complete righteous person in a moment. So you can't always tell from what a person was before, but you can definitely tell from the words they use, the way they're acting in present tense. So, but you can't. So you can tell at least that a person's not overtly wicked. But what can't necessarily be told if the person is internally wicked, right? They could be outwardly showing all kinds of positive behavior and positive words, but we don't know. Someone could be echad bepeh, echad belev. They could be one thing in their mouth, they show the world, and another thing in their heart. It's very possible. It takes a certain very sensitive spiritual vision to detect a person like that. Even the most sensitive people can be fooled. can be taken in by phony people, external people, right? Again, related to shells. So we could even, it's not just listening to regular music, but even going to shul and listening to holy music in the shul, davening. We might have, as the Rebbe Nachman would say, that we don't always know where the person should be davening. Beautiful, beautiful words of praise, songs of praise to Hashem, to the Holy One. But nevertheless, we don't know what's in their heart. And a person could be harmed by their song, even they're harmed by the song of holy words, if the person is wicked and maybe the person doesn't know it. So how do you protect yourself? So one approach might be, which unfortunately many people take, don't listen to anything. Close your ears to all music because anything could be harmful. Or a better possibility, right? A better eitzah, better advice is to take Rabbi Nachman's advice. He says like this: how do you protect yourself? Hu al yedei yilmud b'layla Torah sheba'al peh. This is so we learn at nighttime the oral Torah. We learn Talmud, we learn Chassidus, we learn Halacha, we learn the oral Torah, we learn Medrash, Chassidic stories, right? We learn the oral Torah at nighttime. That will protect us from a question mark when it comes to the music that we're confronted with. This is a very important part of approaching the question of what music is kosher for me, what music is kosher to share with my children. So we'll conclude here. So the Hainu Gemara Shehi Bechinas Laila. So particularly talking about Gemara, right? Torah Sheba'al Peh, right? But a lot of things come out of Gemara, again, like Halacha, Medrash, connected to Gemara. But particularly Gemara is a particular segula. It's a protection for songs that could potentially harm you. So it's important to learn every night a little bit of Gemara, right? Right? Again, this could be expanded. Could ask, is literally Gemara? Well, yes, literally Gemara is important. Learning Chassidus is also good, right? Because Chassidus quotes Gemara. Any source that would quote Gemara, which Chassidus does very, very abundantly, right? Certainly Halacha is also oral Torah because it takes from Gemara. But nevertheless, this is the protection, right? So we already we're building our understanding about kosher music, right? Number one, that instrumental music in general is parav. Doesn't matter the musician. We don't have to check in to see how righteous the musician is. Because there's no words attached that we have to worry about. And because there's not any singing that can transmit this negativity that we're talking about here, all it takes is the music is good. If the music makes you feel good and it's instrumental, it's doing something positive, it's creating a positive atmosphere, then it's most likely kosher. And every person can use their own judgment based on that. Obviously with a good guide and what's called mashpia, mentor, and maybe discussion. Sometimes it's not so clear depending on how music affects you. Sometimes even instrumental music, it might not affect you in a positive way. And whatever, one has to learn to be, as they grow, to be more spiritually sensitive. But in terms of vocal music, it's very important. Even music with parav or kosher words, with holy words, one needs to be cautious about the singer they're listening to. And if you're not sure, because we're not sure about anybody, really, then we protect ourselves through learning Gemara at night, oral Torah at night. So this is important because we need to increase in music. We need to not shield ourselves away, protect ourselves to the point of closing our ears to the majority of music, which unfortunately a lot of people, when they become newly religious, they learn this to throw away their old music collection, and to never delve into it again because now they're going to be a super holy person. No, that's not the approach. It's not the healthy approach. It's not the redemption approach. Redemption approach is to redeem whatever you can redeem. If something's completely not kosher, I can think of some examples, right? Pop music, for example, where the words they really express negative, very grub, very, very coarse, and sometimes sadistic and evil things in the lyrics. That for sure is something that I believe a sensitive spiritual person should not listen to. And I think when a person is growing in their spiritual sensitivity, they'll start to not get pleasure from that music anymore. But music that's right? But that's for sure. But then you look through your music collection, and maybe certain things, the words are parav, or it's just instrumental, and that can and should be redeemed. It should be used in your service of Hashem, right? And should we increase in music, not to decrease in music. We should strive to find, and sometimes even that, so to speak, not kosher music, right? There might be a place for that also. If you're a musician and you need to study that style, maybe in that process of studying that style, obviously each to their own. Or maybe someone's going to take that style and even more so and elevate it, use it for something holy, right? So, or someone has certain associations and it brings them joy, even though there's negativity. Each person on their own guidance with their mentor, in conversation with friends. If anyone wants to contact me with any questions in this regard, please write to you can write to yisraelaryeh@gmail.com. That's YISROEL @gmail.com. If you have any questions in regard to what music might be kosher for you or not, I'm happy to have a discussion over email. But the point is that we need to increase in joy in this world, and we need to increase in music. We need to bring Mashiach and the redemption. As we say, with abundant singing and playing of music, we bring about the true and complete redemption.